Hey everyone, it's Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. This is my weekly comic book thoughts video, only it's running way late. So I'm going to be talking about comic books that I bought on April 24th, more than a week ago. I haven't picked up my new comics. I am on the road. I flew across country. I'm now in Connecticut on the east coast of the United States. And the exciting part of that is that I will get to meet up with Higgy Pop tomorrow, um, Mr. Higgins. So on New Comic Book Day, Free Comic Book Day, and maybe I'll pick up some other comics then. Um, but I had 15 books that this past week, and so it took me longer to read them, and then I just didn't have a lot of time getting ready to travel to make a video. So I threw them all in my bag and brought them along because I guess I'm obsessive like that. So, and then another thing I noticed is I really did not like the covers from the comics this week that I got. And I was kind of shocked how, in my mind, how bad some of these covers were. I'm sure other people have different opinions. But so before I do the countdown in terms of what I enjoyed reading, I'm going to do a countdown from best cover to worst, or from okay cover to worst cover of these comics, just because I feel like doing it. So the best cover was Batman Dark Age. This is a Michael Allred cover, and I like it, but even this is kind of a busy cover, and it takes your eye a while to interpret it. But um, but at least it tells an interesting story once you do. Batman's or Bruce Wayne's in jail. There's maybe a riot or a jailbreak going on. Maybe Poison Ivy is coming to attack. Although try to remember, I don't think Poison Ivy actually features in this issue. But yeah, it's a pleasing cover, but it's not the cover that would jump out at you from the racks, I think, just because it's a bit complicated. This cover, so at number 2, Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives. This cover might jump out at you a bit from the rack, but as you look at it more, it just has that uncanny Photoshop feel. There may or may not have been any drawing involved. It may be a collage of a couple of screen caps from the movie Creature of the Black Lagoon. I watched earlier in the week, I watched part of the Creature in the Black Lagoon movie, and I can tell you for sure that these legs, I would, because I'd already read the comic and I was watching it, and there's a scene where the woman's swimming in the water and her legs look exactly like this, down to the way the shadows are there and stuff. So on her feet. So I think the artist probably grabbed the legs, changed the color on them a bit, grabbed a different image of the creature. Maybe he drew the creature or slightly modified the creature. I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't seen an image from the movie where his hand is extended like that. Um, I'm not sure, but because I haven't watched the whole movie yet either. But and then just added some effects. So anyway, it's a nice looking cover, but then it on closer examination. So that's my number. That's my second best cover. I like the look of this number 3, the Dawn Runner cover. Um, but so it kind of catches the eye, but then it's hard for the eye to interpret. Partially due to the coloring style, I guess, and partially I don't know. There's something about the color's definitely a lot to do with it, but there's also something about the way it's drawn. I guess my lighting here is not the greatest for looking at covers. I apologize. Something about the way it's drawn that you start to look at it and you're not sure much of what's going on. If you know what this book is about, you'll say, "Oh, well, that must be a monster. That must be a robot," but it doesn't immediately read to the eye, in my opinion. So that was number 3. So they're already they're already going downhill quickly. This cover on Mythologies Apocrypha from Tim Lane is kind of an eye catcher, but again, what's going on? It almost, maybe he's hinting at a film strip kind of effect, but he's not. The artist is not conveying that very well. it is kind of it's different than the other covers, so that's nice. Here's the back cover, kind of cool. But so that was my number four. Um, this one is kind of not a bad cover, and it's a bit eye-catching, but there's something about having the what do you call it, the tuning part of the guitar covering so much of his face that creates again a weird kind of split down the middle of the cover and makes what was otherwise a good cover just kind of a little odd, a little off. I don't think I would have picked this up for the cover. Um, I picked it up because Colin Bunn was writing it. This cover's not bad. So what are we on now? That was five. One, two, three, four, five, six. Whoa. No, this is the cover number six. Maybe I should have put this one a little higher. The colors on this are kind of grabbing, and it's kind of a fun cover. Again, I don't know. It could communicate more. If you know what the story's already about, you sort of get the symbolism here with the vampires and the sun. But if you didn't know, you wouldn't know these are vampires. It is kind of cool. The guy's holding some axes, so that part's fun. Maybe I should have ranked that cover higher. There's nothing wrong with the art on this cover, but it's so unattractive, and it's just kind of odd. But maybe some people would like the oddness of this cover because the guy's neck maybe isn't really his neck, but just part of a stripe going up. But then there's the red parts of the stripe going this way. I'm not sure what it means. Oh, it's those coming out of the eyeballs of these people who I think, do they work for heaven or hell? I don't know. So it's kind of a cool cover, but kind of an unattractive cover to me also. So I think that was number seven. In at number eight, there's nothing wrong with this cover except, and it's kind of cool the way all the meat is flipping around or whatever kind of food that's supposed to be, and the interaction with the logo. But there's just something so unattractive about the guy on the cover and this image of cooking. Like it makes cooking look unpleasant to me. It doesn't help that he seems to have blood on his hands. And so it just, you know, if I want to read about a really ugly guy eating meat, then maybe this cover would appeal to me. I actually loved the art in that comic. This cover really struck me as bad. So that was cover number nine, I think. My math is going to be all wrong, but it doesn't really matter. But this seems like a really weak showing for an artist. You know, you'd think they do some of their best illustration work on the cover, but it seems like a very so-so drawing of a guy with a knife. Now I have to admit, and there's stuff going on down below that you don't notice till you look at the cover several times with these cars pulling up to what, maybe a hospital? I'm not sure. Um, Now, after reading the comic, all I noticed all this stuff here with the weird mystic symbols and the way the city maybe is built out of weird mystic symbols too. And then the cover seemed a bit cooler to me. But on first glance, this really seemed like a weak cover. Here's one, Drawing Blood, a new comic from Kevin Eastman and company, which I feel bad for disliking this cover, but I I wasn't going to pick up this off the rack, but I saw the names, Kevin Eastman, David Avalone, who I've enjoyed some of his writing, I think, if I got the right name. So I said, well, I'm going to get this anyway. Plus, I opened it up and the insides didn't look bad. But this cover, although I often like Kevin Eastman's drawing style, is such a visual mess. Where does the eye go? How the colors are really ugly and just battle each other. Everything about the cover just strikes me as a amateurish cover. Sorry, Kevin Eastman. Um, then so what are we down to now? Like this is number 10 maybe. And if you find this, I'm already dead. All the covers of this series are bad because of the strip going across the person's face. It just I can see how they thought it was clever, but for me, it just doesn't work. This is kind of an interesting visuals going on around the back, but that thing just really ruins it for me. Um, and funny, when I flip it over and we do see her face, somehow the cover again looks much of the cover looks like kind of a quickie sketch to me. I guess maybe he knew the face was going to be covered over, so he didn't uh, put a lot of work in that face. But that definitely, you know, feels like a face that I could picture in a fanzine, a fan drawing. I could draw a face like that. In at number 11, we got World Tree, or I don't know how else you'd pronounce it, but World Tree. They've blurred this seemingly bad to me, badly drawn figure in the foreground has been blurred, and then the colors make everything kind of a blur together. Although the drawing of the dead people in the background is actually good, but you don't notice that at first. And this just doesn't seem either appealing or well drawn here on World Tree. Now, in terms of the story, this cover makes sense, but it doesn't communicate story to the reader looking at it on the stands. And it may be because comics are written for the trade that covers the whole reason for doing covers has become different. It's more about selling, in some cases, the variant covers. So that might be why one of the worst covers of the week was on one of the best comics of the week, Conan the Barbarian, number 10. This cover just seems horrible to me, especially given the high level of art we've come to expect from Conan comics. But there are some really nice variant covers. I always told my shop to give me the A covers, so I'm paying for that because these B and C covers from this Conan, and like that B cover, whoops, over here, that's fantastic. But this looks like a quick sketch that a normal artist would throw out as kind of a mistake, and then it's been super pumped up with the coloring. Um, yeah, that's my take on it. But perhaps even worse, although in a way I have more sympathy for this cover. This looks like the work of a talented amateur who likes drawing barbarians, and I've certainly been well, I don't know if talented, but I've certainly in my time liked drawing barbarian pictures. Maybe maybe the colors aren't helping it, but it why this image for the cover is this? I don't think this is going to sell a cover. But I think they think Slash Presents and Deathstalker, the very well-known brand of movie Barbarian, will sell a cover. The interior art is far, far better, and the coloring's far, far better. So this cover really puzzles me. But the cover I thought was the cheapest dash off of all. This just looks like almost a hasty sketch from a thumbnail to me. I mean, maybe some work was done on the wrinkles on this arm. But really, I don't know. The hand, which is very prominent there, is not very well drawn, to my mind. Even these fingers here look, I don't know, a little bit snaky. Um, Face in shadows. It's it wasn't a great didn't have great interior art either, but the interior art was better than this cover. And I don't understand why you don't put your best foot forward on a cover. The back cover is similar, a little bit better, but still kind of lazy looking. So that's my take on the covers. I'm gonna shoot now, do chapter 2, where I give you my take on what I like. So I suppose those cover reactions were pretty darn mean or cruel and very subjective. And now on to the very subjective ranking by order of my personal reaction to all of these 15 comics from the one I reacted least well to down to my favorite of the week at number one. So from 15 to one. All definitely part of my personal reading diary, not telling other people what they should think. So for me at number 15, sadly, was Slash Presents Deathstalker, the return of the last great warrior king. So I always years ago, looking through the cheap videos or the cheaply made movies at the video store back in the day, would look at movies like Deathstalker and say, eventually I've got to rent that, and I never got around to it. So now I managed to stream the movie. I don't see any connection between this and the movie other than you've got a barbarian type character um, in some kind of barbarian world. The hair color's different, the way he dresses is different, but there were multiple Deathstalker movies. Maybe it evolved. Maybe he eventually became the last great warrior king. Um, it was kind of a down with kings kind of thing in the original Deathstalker movie. I almost liked the Deathstalker movie. There were lots of naked boobs, and there was some kind of cool super B movie scenes, but it was also super rapey. So I'm laughing, but they did the rapes as if it was just good-hearted fun, like at a frat party. Let's all have a party, and the girls are banging on our chests saying no, 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 and we just laugh and rip their chests, their shirts off. So I guess that was still anyway. That's not in here. There's a lot of nudity in here though, and including an a oft featured schlong, which you don't see in the movie. Um, in a way, I was entertained by how bad this was, but on another hand, it was like, come on, how hard is it to do a fun barbarian kind of story? In at number 14 was Dick Tracy. Um, the story is decent. The art is decent, but I don't know. It just felt kind of generic and rushed. I'm noticing a lot of how maybe a lot of modern comic art, the artists aren't paid very much. So they, especially in these kind of, obscure indie things, and they've done too many shortcuts. But on top of that, what is the point of Dick Tracy? Just another detective chasing down another mystery, kind of generic, except that the original Dick Tracy was all about the bizarreness of the villains and the world and the quirkiness, and this kind of shaves away all the quirkiness. So all you're left with is a decent mystery story, told by an artist doing his job. I've been thinking a lot this week about how the artist is the co-writer of the story. You can't just write a good story or write an okay story, and it all it all depends on the artist is the co-writer. And so the I don't know how good the script was, but combined with the art, it became kind of a story. The Cult of the Wilkin Boy. I already told you what I thought about this cover, sort of love and hate it. The art on the inside was pretty decent, nothing to be embarrassed about or anything. And the writing by Colin Bunn was good, except that, so here's what the writer usually supplies is the core of the story, right? Including what happens at the end. And the end, I by the end of the story, I felt like I didn't get much out of it. Like the point of it all was lost. But it might be that this is really I guess there was already a Wilkin Boy um, one shot, and there might be a third one shot eventually that will sort of wrap up the story, and then it will have more meaning. We'll see. But so I was kind of disappointed because I thought, oh, maybe Colin Bunn is giving us a good story here, and then by the end, it was like he's not giving us much of a story. World Tree, I'm ranking at number 12. There was this. I guess I'm sorry with my Connecticut locations. I got a nice background, but it doesn't do justice to the comics in the foreground. Aside from the cover, the interior art is nice. The reason I had to rank this low is I could not remember enough of who's who and where we are in the story. I remember the general thrust of World Tree, and I read most of it all at once until maybe issue 8. And now even though I should remember all of it, there's not enough here to get me back into the story. So this may definitely be something that is way better in the trade. We got some nudity in here too. Um, Maybe nudity was a minor theme in the and we get some gay sex, but I think mostly with clothes on. So anyway, it's a cool comic book. I just lost the thread a bit. Um, so maybe this is just one to read in trades. The Bloody Dozen, A Tale of the Shrouded College, the penultimate issue, and the story just feels like it's a mess. And I think maybe it's because, that idea of the artist as the co-writer, that this artist is not that good of a co-writer for me. Um, so the art looks kind of interesting and pizzazzy, but maybe it doesn't convey story and emotion the way maybe the original script wanted it to. I don't know. That's a big guess. But somehow it was fun to read, but didn't click with me in a deeper way. So almost everything I read this week was a fun read, except maybe cringing at the Deathstalker comic and a little bit of disappointment with the Dick Tracy. But so I'm not putting Bloody Dozen down by ranking it at 11. I'm still glad I'm reading it. And in at 10 is Dawn Runner. With the interior art sometimes has that problem that the cover does, that it's not totally so that's not always true. Like there's a lot of nice art in here, but there seems to me key stuff. I complained about it with the last issue. Key stuff where we would want to see more of what's going on, or then you get panels like that where you really have to work to see that there's a person behind a windshield with rain on it. But that might be cool. But the action scenes, there's a robot fight going on there, but and it looks cool, but then when you try to see what's going on, you lost the thread. So if there's anything important in there, and there's what is really going on in terms of the issue, the woman who's one of the robot controllers is having with memories of someone else's life, because of the way it's drawn or presented. um it's not always, it took a while finally in this issue, as opposed to the first issue, it kind of understand a little bit more what's going on. I did like this issue quite a bit more. um but there are things that could have made me connect with the story a lot more too. So it was a good story, that and some cool art that could have been great. um the coloring is by Dave Stewart. There's some other comics in here colored by Dave Stewart that I thought were really good, but something to me is working wrong in the basics of storytelling here. But it is developing into more of a cool story. Ram V always has some interesting things up his sleeve, and any prose he does do is very pleasing to read. So I would say even a Ram V story that's not fully working for me still has a lot to offer. Ram V was the writer on Dawn Run. Matt Kint is the writer on If You Find This, I'm Already Dead. I'm putting this at number 9, and a lot of that has to do with how much I liked issue 2 and how much I liked the art and color in this issue. There's some really cool stuff. So in terms of the writer, the artist as writer, and even maybe to some extent the colorist, certainly the colorist helps as a mood creator. and a accentuator of what the line artist is doing. Um, you know, that was excellent, and I got so much pleasure out of that. And I, from the middle issue, I kind of had the sense of this weird journey, and and the pleasures of just a weird journey through all kinds of super imaginative stuff. You know, a little bit of Kirby, a little bit of Mobius, and that kind of thing. Uh, and that was really good. But I I was like, eh, when the sort of the reveals of what the story was, this is the final issue. So it felt like all the actual what the story is actually about is packed into this issue, and it's just sort of made, this is going to happen, and now this is going to happen to make to force a conclusion. But and when I sometimes my daughter asked me, well, what have you been reading? And we were on a walk, and I explained to her the convoluted plot of what was really going on here, and she said, "That sounds dumb." Basically, Matt Kint had maybe what was a cool idea in his head, but by the way he just sort of shoved it all together, it ultimately was revealed to be kind of a dumb story. But I didn't notice too much on the read, and I was enjoying the art so much. The artist was doing his job, or their job, the colorist and the artist doing their job very well. So it kind of lifted up the feeling that it was somewhat of a good story. And then in at number 8 is mythologies. And here, well, this one raises the question of how should you do something as a comic book or just as prose with a few illustrations? Because large parts of this are a very cool read about Frank Sinatra and Elvis, and kind of wedged in wedged in something about Steve McQueen too. But I thought the Frank Sinatra parts were the most interesting. But most of it is told through talking heads. And how cool would it be to have a comic book that explores the rise and fall and rise again of Frank Sinatra, that actually drew out the scenes, and told the story with the art. So this is an artist who's also the writer, and he's choosing to do things this way, and it was a fun read. I enjoyed it quite a bit. But it did make me ask the question of why not do it another way? Why do it this way? There was a really cool scene that we got fully presented with these Sammy Davis Jr. and Steve Niven, not Niven, what's his name? I can't hold. Steve McQueen. I don't know why I say Stephen McNiven. Steve McQueen and someone else. Was it anyway, on this set of a movie that's supposed to be the moon, and they're doing they're practicing their quick draw things while wearing masks. Anyway, that was a really cool scene, and yeah, I really like this Tim Lane's art. But I'll read more of his comics, even if there are a lot of talking heads, if they're this interesting. But it's a shame that more of it was not just talking heads in my mind. And then I don't even know what's going on in some of the stuff. So all of it's one story, and then he stuck an extra story, Junkman, which I already read in the comic book Now, the comic anthology Now, was a number of years ago. And it's beautifully drawn, and I didn't reread it. I don't remember being wowed by the story so much as the art originally. In at number 7 is The Infernals, a story I'm really enjoying. I and it's progressing in interesting ways, but there's it would rank even higher if I were more clear on everything. There's some kind of politics going on in hell, and I'm not sure who versus who is going on. At the end of the comic, we get stuff from heaven introduced, and I'm worried that I already am unclear on the politics of hell and whether the politics of this fictional heaven in this universe will make sense to me too. But on the other hand, it's a really cool story. I really like, even though I wish it was more clear, I like the weave of the different elements and the different characters. You've got the three children of the Antichrist, But the one who I feel does need more attention, and maybe she'll get it next issue, is the teenage daughter, who's just gotten out of boarding school. Um, so anyway, very interesting comic. It has painted art, and it's weird. I'm so used to line art; it's a mental adjustment to look at painted art, and maybe some painted art grabs me more than other. This is good painted art, but yeah, I'm I'm not sure what I think about it. Okay, and I ranked Rare Flavors number at number six. This is number five. I feel like I heard someone say there's one more issue. This felt like the final issue. Maybe this is the final issue. Um, I rank this pretty high in this large stack of comics because I loved the art, other than the cover, which is ironic. The cover is by the artist Interior, but I loved this art so much. And as I was thinking about artists as co-writers, I was just thinking about how much thought goes into the panel to panel movement on every page. And when you start paying attention, you see how the artist is really thinking about how to put together everything. And on top of that, he has this very simple line art that is always on spot, and then he does his own really pleasing, beautiful colors in tones that I haven't seen any other artists do that I can think of. So that just makes this a a very pleasurable read. And I flipped back and forth a lot. I kept looking at it more, and that's where I started, you know, noticing more the clever storytelling on the part of the artist. The the core of the story just has not grabbed me. The story of this gourmet demon and the documentary filmmaker that's working with him, potentially really cool ideas. And I feel like Ram V was trying to get at certain things about life, and I just didn't connect with it that much. So this might have been, in an alternate universe where I did connect with it, this could have been my favorite comic of the week. But for me, it was more about the art. I enjoyed the atmosphere, and I like the concept of this gourmet demon, but I just didn't get into it that much. So another comic by Ram V and Dan Waters writing, probably a much lesser effort, much less heart put into it than Rare Flavors, but I was entertained and had fun reading The Creature from the Black Lagoon. This is cover B. My shop never got cover A. They got shorted on that. I would have liked cover A better. I think it looks like a real drawing. Um, but it's a 4.99 book, but it's got really nice covers. This has coloring from Dave Stewart, which I think adds a huge amount to the comic. I'm sorry about the lighting. You can't see it as well as I can. Uh, the artist is decent, is a good artist, a good storyteller, but I think the coloring added a lot. And it's a sort of a simple story, but it kind of a simple story with a monster story is a good one. It's not a retelling of Creature from the Black Lagoon. Instead, it's a different Black Lagoon, I think, even than in the original movie. But it's a compelling story about a reporter who was almost drowned by someone who might be a serial killer, and she thinks the serial killer is here in the town where there's this mythic creature of the Black Lagoon going on. I don't know if they call it the Black Lagoon. I have to go back, but yeah, the colors in here are wonderful, and it's it's a fun read. If I were to say there was any flaw with it, is maybe it's too simple of a story in the sense there's really only one or two characters total. There's really only one main character, and often a story's better if you have more people, more characters to bounce off of. Um, One of the fun things about the original Black Lagoon movie, I think, is the group of scientists and explorers and how they're interacting with each other in the movie. That gives you more of your interest than the monster itself. I mean, the monster is interesting, but And a comic book I liked a lot, Drawing Blood, with one of the covers I hated. In fact, on the interior, there's a two-page sequence drawn by the cover artist, by Kevin Eastman, which I loved. I loved his art here. That's really good stuff. This is like a semi-autobiographical comic, even though I think it's sort of created and co-plotted by Kevin Eastman and David Avallone, and David Avallone actually wrote the script. But this main character is a comic book artist who had a huge hit and is now struggling, and he's getting involved in financial problems, but with the mob. Hopefully, that wasn't true in real life. His ex-wife is a porn star. His ex-wife was kind of a penthouse. Uh, the real Eastman's ex-wife was a penthouse pinup girl and a an actress in fun B movies. So not quite a porn star the way she is in here. But and the art is decent, but it's outshined by that that one black and white spread by Eastman. And there's another dream sequence by a different artist too. But anyhow, yeah, I think that there is by a different artist. It's a fun mix of things about show business, comic books, crime fiction, um, getting in too deep in life. I'm really enjoying it. So I'm definitely adding this onto my pull list. I don't know how many issues there'll be. Uh, but yeah, very cool comic. And totally under the radar to me. I just saw it on the shelves. I hadn't heard anything about it coming up like a semi-autobiographical comic book by Kevin Eastman. That might be a headline kind of thing. Um, okay. Then in at number three, I'm putting the Six Fingers. I did not like this cover, but this issue again even further begins to pull the story into focus of both the Six Fingers and the One Hand, these two interlaced comics, one written by Ron V, one written by Dan Waters. This is the Dan Waters one. Um, cool art, great coloring by Lowridge. But now we're getting a lot more revealed. Some things I suspected seem to be true. I'm still wondering. I don't want to give away too much, but this was taking place way in the future, but this future is not really what it seems. Perhaps something along the lines of the Matrix, but I think a little different. But it's presented in a really fun way here. And again, the maybe not on the level of Rare Flavors, but the artist is a great co-writer with the writer here, I think. The artist does a great job helping tell this difficult to tell sort of abstract story. So I'm not going to say more about that. Yeah, I want to say more about it, but uh, not finally, my penultimate book, a really excellent, another is kind of a cliche at this point, Conan by Jim Zub and the great artists that are working with him is really great. And this continues that. We uh, we progress the story towards, I guess, the Black Stone issue, the not issue, the Black Stone, MacGuffin, if you will, Black Stone villain, with a lot of other details. Some like this area is a back flashback by Cull, and I'm kind of distracted by the birds, to tell you the truth. And we get stuff in the modern day with Cull. We get Cull and Brule and Conan and a bunch of warriors um, set out sailing to Atlantis and get to fight pirates. You get to have some pretty naughty sex scenes, uh, and the art remains. Oop, don't look. The art remains really cool, and I think it's even better. I think both does Roberto De La Torre improve in his mishmash of mostly Buscema-ish takes, but work of other artists, of very Frazetta-ish stuff too. But we got a new colorist on this issue. The colorist who was the colorist on the other artist on Doug Braithwaite is now part of the team here. Where's the credits? I don't want to get his name wrong. The colorist is Dangerous Diego Rodriguez, and I'm pretty sure he's replacing who was doing the colors last issue. But anyway, the colors last issue is not bad, but this Diego has just the right touch. He's my favorite Conan colorist now, and so the art just looks just right to me. So I was super happy with this book. It could easily have been my number one book, despite this horrendously horrible cover. Like what were they thinking? Again, it looks to me like just some sort of out of control fan drawing with then some good coloring on top. Oh well. Finally, at number one, Batman Dark Age, issue number 2 by Mark Russell and by the Allreds. Definitely when you read any comic with Michael Allred as the artist, you sense his presence all over the comic. So he's he's co-writer par excellence. He gives the whole comic book its feel, and he's a great partner with the kind of stories Mark Russell does because they're both quirky and off center, but also interested in mainstream things, if you will, mainstream storytelling at the same time. Quirky, but mainstream. So this is wild because this is so far away from the usual origin of Bruce Wayne. Unlike like you might have an Elseworlds where Bruce Wayne is in, Gothic London or something. Uh, but this is a Bruce Wayne who goes to jail, then gets freed from jail to go fight in some kind of special forces, sort of almost commando forces, I guess, in Vietnam, where they are trained and led by uh, another version of, I want to find his picture, of Ra's al Ghul. Um, so I don't know. That's just a taste of how different this is. And it's so well drawn and so well paced. I just found it a completely enjoyable reading experience. Now, yeah, and it's got a lot of cool action drawn in a Michael Allred kind of way. And I'm wishing I did the lighting differently here. I sacrificed all for this nice background. But it's nice to be out here on the porch, even though the birds are making my thoughts drift. So yeah, this is magnificent. I don't know how many books there's going to be. They're double or almost 2.5 times the size of a regular comic. Almost no ads. So it's an excellent deal for slightly more money. For $6, it's a much better deal than a $4 or $5 comic that we normally get from DC or Marvel. So yeah, I am so happy with this comic book. However, trigger warnings if you're a fan of Batman and you want Batman to be Batman. This is another guy with all of the Batman things. He's Bruce Wayne and he's going to become Batman, but everything else is different. And why Mark Russell likes to do that, I don't know, and that sometimes works, and sometimes doesn't. Like I did not like his Fantastic Four take, but this is really clicking for me. So I imagine this is a long one. I appreciate those of you. So it's probably going to be 45 minutes long. Oh man, I really was aiming to do all my videos under 30 minutes from now on. But there you go. 15 comics, not willing to edit. And that's what we end up with. So I'll talk to you all later. I hope you're having a good comic book week. Maybe a good free comic book day if you're in a country where they do free comic book day. And have a great time.